So is this Ron Paul's time? Can mainstream America really accept his views and give him a shot in 2012? Or will the Washington establishment do whatever they can to keep him down? Well, I'm joined by Bradley Jansen, adjunct scholar at the Competitive Enterprise Institute and director of the Center for Financial Privacy and Human Rights. Bradley, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, tell me, how long have you personally been a fan of Dr. Paul's?
I've been a fan of Dr. Paul's since my early years of high school in 1981. I agreed with Republicans and conservatives on some issues and Democrats and liberals on a few issues, and then I found Ron Paul and everything kind of fell into place, and I've been a supporter ever since.
Since 1981, I mean, that
Yes.
feels like forever, especially if we talk about politics. So what's it like now watching his transformation, watching every single channel out there, put him on the media? All of a sudden, he's not this outsider, this fringy lawmaker anymore. He's mainstream.
Right. Well, I've had the opportunity to vote for him for president twice, once in 1988 and then again in the most recent presidential primary. And when I voted for him the first time, it was just me and a couple of my college friends, and then this last time, of course, there was a huge groundswell. And it was funny watching the debates then. There was an economic debate among the Republicans in Detroit, and if you go back and read the transcripts or watch it now, the Republican candidates, McCain and Romney and the others, were falling all over themselves, trying to take credit for Bush's great economic legacy and how great the economy was. And Dr. Paul was just asking what planet they were from and trying to point out the structural and serious problems that the country was facing. And of course, you know, a year and a half, 2 years later, everyone's kind of come around to Ron Paul's way of understanding where we are with the economy and what needs to be changed.
Well, do you think, had it not been for the economy, would anyone have embraced his stand? I mean, now we have a majority of Americans that even consider, perhaps even abolishing the Fed or at least changing its structure somehow. These were ideas that were looked at as absolutely crazy. But had the economy not collapsed, would Ron Paul be popular the way he is now?
Well, of course, you can't answer the hypothetical, but I mean, the Federal Reserve and the breakdown of the Bretton Woods system was why Dr. Paul got into politics in the first place. He knew what was happening, you know, when we went off the gold standard in '71, and that's why he got into politics. So he's been out there explaining this for a long time. And if you look at graphs that show the value of the dollar, you know, from the time the country started through the creation of the Fed, it's after we went off the gold standard internationally that we really started having a lot of problems. And Dr. Paul was, you know, the lone voice pointing out that what the results of those problems would be. And so, yeah, I do think a lot of people are coming around because of that.
How far do you think that the establishment Republicans are actually going to let him go? I mean, now we know that he's chairing the Monetary Policy Subcommittee, but at some point you feel like, well, he's about to, you feel like at some point they're just going to have to say, stop, enough, shut up. Nobody actually wants to end the Fed. Nobody actually wants to end all wars. That's not Republican.
Well, okay, he's not going to be able to end the wars from the Domestic Monetary Policy Subcommittee. The Congress.
But how much are they going to let him say before they try to push him down?
Look, the Congress is a collaborative body, and things are done by committee. So it's important in those negotiations to start off with your strongest hand, and that is Dr. Paul. So whatever happens, there are going to be compromises through the Congress, through getting things through the Senate, and then ideally signed by President Obama. So it's important that we start off with our strongest hand, and Dr. Paul is that hand. You start off as pure and strong as possible. You know, you don't start off with a compromised position the way the Republicans always have. Do
you think that he's going to run into some problems here, that you could say that libertarianism itself is picking up a bit in America, but when it comes to social issues, he's not necessarily the most liberal guy?
Well, and I think the Republican caucus put Dr. Paul where he can play to his strengths. I mean, the monetary policy doesn't do with war, doesn't deal with the social issues, but on the economic issues, it is where the Republican caucus looks for him for guidance and leadership and understanding on how to address these problems. And they've given him the perfect format for that.
But what about when it comes to another presidential run, if he does have one in 2012?
He will have a much bigger soapbox to stand on than he has ever had before. So.
You think he's going to have a chance? I mean, who could possibly run with him?
Who would his competitors be, or on the ticket?
Who would run with him on the ticket as the VP?
Well, yeah, I think it's actually going to be interesting this time, because when he ran in 1988 and again in the last time, if he had not been there, that voice wouldn't have been in the debate. This time, I think you're going to find a lot of other candidates sort of trying to pick up that same mantle and run with that same message. So we've got, Gary Johnson, and I think Sanford would have been close before he sort of took himself out of politics. Mitch Daniels, Pence, and some others are very close with Dr. Paul on a lot of issues. And in fact, Pence, who's been a conservative leader in the House for a long time, thinking of running for president, is now trying to make monetary policy and attacks on the Fed part of his agenda. And he's trying to claim that mantle. So instead of Dr. Paul being, the lone voice in the cold, as it's been reported, now we've got copycat politicians trying to take on his issues and his mantle and present them as their own. So, I mean,
nobody wants to give him credit on this one, but definitely it has been a transformation of the guy that was once laughed at by the media, really has become mainstream. We'll see how far it'll take him. Bradley, thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you.